Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are. My name is Mark Cumming. I'm with Comhlámh in Ireland. I'm also on the board of Forum and delighted to be with you today and to introduce this panel, this wonderful panel of speakers. We have 4 different presentations, and the theme of this pod is Advocacy for Reform. So we hope you enjoy. And let me start then by first off introducing Paul Buenconsejo. Paul is currently the Executive Director of the Philippine Coalition on Volunteerism and the Liaison Officer of the League of Corporate Foundation Health Committee. Paul has over 25 years of experience in corporate social responsibility work in both the mining and banking sectors, ranging from operational planning to policy making. Paul is an active consultant on stakeholder engagement and is also a member of the League of Corporate Foundation, Corporate Social Responsibility Institute's Speakers Bureau. Paul, you're very welcome. Over to you now.
We would like to thank the Forum for giving PhilCV an opportunity to share our experience on the global standards for volunteering for development. Upon hearing the international call for volunteering for development, the PhilCV immediately grabbed the opportunity to champion this cause. We firmly believe that the cause shall help elevate the volunteer experience towards a more meaningful contribution towards the betterment of our country. We saw volunteerism for development as a way to fine-tune and focus the goals and methodologies of the various volunteer involving and engaging organizations towards measurable impact. We especially embrace how the standards highlight the 3 most important aspects of development work, namely the primacy of the community in addressing their concerns and becoming active partners in their own development, the clarifying of goals as it is linked with a country's national development agenda and the sustainable development goals, and the re-emphasis in exercising care to the volunteers, and that the impact of their work in our activities is also met with an impact on the volunteers themselves. As one of our members commented, these 3 aspects are often not emphasized enough or even neglected, especially the part on the caring for volunteers because of the volume of work we face day to day. We equally recognize that this journey of transformation towards becoming an organization that mobilizes and engages volunteers for development is a journey that not all organizations would embrace immediately. There is a certain comfort in doing the same things as it has afforded gains and successes before. Introducing the standards for volunteering for development may be met with apprehension as it would make them question some of their set ways. This is where the value of being in a coalition comes in. Our member organizations benefit from the experiences and encouragement of their fellow members. We are always emboldened by collective action. The sharing of experiences helps members see the rationale of moving towards volunteering for development. In localizing the standards, we leaned on the network that our members provide. We listened first to their views and opinions on each of the standards and see how closely the standards reflected what is happening on the ground. Through these consultations, we identified 3 different expressions of volunteer engagement. Borrowing from the Volunteer Program Development and Management Training of VSO Philippines, we coined the following terms to reflect the difference. The first is the regular or embedded volunteer engagement, which refers to organizations whose volunteers are engaged on a long-term basis, either part-time or short-time, to perform set programs or projects, or their tasks are crucial to the fulfillment of a project or program. The second one is the employee volunteer engagement, which refers to volunteer engagement and management of employees for activities conducted by the corporation or its corporate foundation, or activities of government agencies by mobilizing their employee volunteers. The last one are the activity-based volunteer engagement, which refers to organizations that engage volunteers only on particular activities. As such, in the process of localizing, we had to consider how the standards would be interpreted given the different levels of engagement. One of the things we also focused on was the need for volunteer-involving organizations to show documents as proof that they are adhering to the standards. Documenting the process and the practice of the standards show that the practice is institutionalized. It also ensures that the practice is carried over even if there are changes in staff or even board members. This is perhaps one of the greatest weaknesses of organizations. Documenting processes, principles, and operations are sometimes forgotten due to the volume of work that the organization needs to do every day. Looking for documentary support on the standards ensure that the practice of these standards is maintained throughout the life of the organization. We are also grateful that the government agency in charge of overseeing volunteer work in the Philippines, the Philippine National Volunteer Service Coordinating Agency, or PNVSCA, has been very cooperative in our effort. When we requested for their comments on the second draft, they immediately farmed out the standards to other government agencies in various provinces of the country, as well as the volunteer involving and engaging organizations in their own network. Immediately, 25 government agencies, regional offices, and local governments provided their inputs. This resulted in a richer document that not only considered the view of civil society and nonprofits, but the government as well. Last July 29, the advisory board of the PNVSCA recognized and adopted the Philippine Standards for Volunteering for Development. We are also happy to note that the promotion of the standards is now part of the strategic plan of the government agency, especially among local governments and government agencies mobilizing their own government employee volunteers. Rest assured that we shall be working closely with the PNVSCA on this endeavor, as well as the other initiatives, such as coming up with the key measures in volunteer contribution in national development. As a tool for self-assessment for each of our members, the standards would help ensure that the organization's programs and volunteers contribute to the well-being of the country. The standards are a barometer to help our members identify areas of growth in their own organization. The standards itself have become a tool to advocate reform within the organization as it becomes a means for our members to reflect on their own operations and discover new paths of where they could take their interventions. Field CV, through our members and our national government and nonprofit partners, will be using the standards to design our learning and growth activities for the volunteer involving and engaging organizations. It may be through the conduct of trainings, holding appropriate webinars, or mentorship among the members. As a coalition, we are taking on this responsibility for growing together in alignment with the standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, for that presentation. And now I introduce our colleagues from VIONet Sierra Leone, the Volunteers Involving Organizations Network Sierra Leone. Mariatu Kabba, Ibrahim Soro Kamara, and Elizabeth Agatha Musa. Mariatu is a Mandela Washington Fellow with several years' experience in broadcast journalism. She's the communication manager of VIONet and a co-founder and executive director of Strong Women, Strong Girls Sierra Leone, a non-profit mentorship initiative that strengthens the socioeconomic status of women and girls. She is also a radio mentor at BBC Media Action Sierra Leone, where she works with community stations to enhance programming, gender mainstreaming, and safeguarding. Her innovative radio programming skills give voice to the marginalised, as she relates inspiring stories of women and girls who push boundaries to make a mark in traditionally male-dominated areas. Ibrahim is a civil society activist and human rights defender. He's the program manager of VIONet, responsible for the coordination and management of all activities and events of the network. He's the founder and coordinator of Youth Welfare and Development Organisation, a local NGO that promotes the welfare and development of young people. He has extensive experience in advocacy and training on women's human rights, particularly sexual reproductive health rights, gender equality, and gender-based violence. Elizabeth is a feminist, advocate, social entrepreneur, and SDG ambassador. She's the regional coordinator for VIONet and a founder of For Her initiative. For Her works to positively transform and impact the livelihoods and well-being of vulnerable and deprived girls and women in impoverished communities in Sierra Leone. She mentors and organises training for youth, girls and women to build, empower, transform and impact their lives, inspiring them to speak up and demand for improved services. So the three of you are very welcome.
Thank you very much. We are speaking from Sierra Leone. We are representing VIONet. My name is Ibrahim Soro Kamara. I'm the program manager. And with me in the hall is Mariatu Esther Kabba, the communication manager national, and Elizabeth Agatha Musa, Western Area Regional Coordinator. Three of us will actually be speaking today. And our presentation content is just three. We'll be speaking on the basic information about VIONet, key activity undertaken by VIONet, and the third one is VIONet's approach to advocacy for inclusive volunteering. The information about VIONet, as we all know, VIONet is an acronym. It simply means Volunteer Involving Organizations Network. It is a Sierra Leone network that actually works progressive. It's a progressive organization that connects volunteers who seek to collaborate with both private and public sector to complement and add value to volunteerism for development. VIONet at the moment have a secretariat at VIONet at BSO because BSO and UNV formed VIONet. And the membership has gone throughout the regions. We have a regional team in the north, in the east, in the south, and in the west, with a main aim to contribute meaningfully to development in various sectors in the country. Our mission is basically to raise voices against rape and other gender-based violence against women and girls. And then we also prioritize youth development and engagement. Our aim is to accelerate progress in the recognition, promotion, facilitation, networking, and integration of volunteer action by and between government, community, civil society, and the private sector for international actors and donor partners. Our vision is to impact our building with meaningful participation for people including older persons, migrant workers, people with disabilities, LGBT people. All of them, we are trying to put them together to ensure that no one is left behind. So far, VIONet has undertaken key activities, among which are emergency response, policy advocacy, gender and development, youth engagement, volunteers as SDGs accelerator, key international celebrations. For this conference, we'll be looking at policy and advocacy. So for this particular conference, we are speaking on three key approaches that VIONet has actually undertaken. One of which is developing a national volunteering policy. The second is our effective participation of the national youth policy, the just completed national youth policy. And third is our active involvement in the COVID-19 response together with government and other partners. Our first is the volunteering policy. As we all know, Sierra Leone is among many countries without a national volunteering policy. And we all know volunteers have worked relentlessly throughout the years without being recognized by government. So VIONet and stakeholders have agreed that Sierra Leone develop a national volunteering policy that will provide policy guidelines, for various key players dealing with volunteerism. This policy also provides an instrumental framework that will facilitate coordination of key stakeholders and their activities to avoid duplication and maximize impact. In addition, by providing standards and operational parameters, the policy will provide a conducive environment for the engagement and functioning of volunteers in a way that will recognize their efforts, take into consideration their contributions, and protect their welfare as the volunteers. So before we do that, there is one document that we already have in place, which is the Global Standard for Volunteering and the African Union Continental Volunteering. So these two policies actually inspired Sierra Leone, VIONet, to actually undertake national volunteering policy. So our national volunteering policy is as a result of, was formed by the Global Standard for Volunteering for Development and the African Volunteering Framework. Before that, before we actually think of that, there was a background check on existing policy on volunteering with relevant institutions have been undertaken. And in that research, there is no policy for Sierra Leone. So we deemed it necessary that Sierra Leone should have a volunteering policy. And so far, so good. We've done a lot to ensure that the process starts. One of the processes that have started is a consultative meeting, because we can't do it alone, with the relevant government, ministry, departments, and agencies, including the civil society, NGOs and INGOs, community-based organizations, those that are implicated at the UN agency, telling them the need for us or for Sierra Leone to develop a national volunteering policy. The government, through the Ministry of Labour, confirmed their commitment and support the process, which is very, very good, because we know this is an arm of government and we need government support on this. 4 regional assessments as also agenda setting workshop has been done in the 4 regions of Sierra Leone with civil society, community-based organizations, and government institutions. The reason why is to have an overview on idea about young people, how to actually undertake or do or develop the national youth policy. And also through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, a technical working group has been formed by the government to lead the policy for development. And this technical working group is charged with the responsibility to ensure that they actually develop the TOR for the consultant, and they will look at so many other key documents to ensure that they help the consultants in developing the national youth policy. And also, VIONet has, together with partners, recruited consultants and data collection process on our way, that policy informed by experience of volunteers. The policy seeks to create an enabling environment for equitable access of volunteering opportunities and better services for volunteers. So I now call on Mariatu Esther Kabba to actually do the national youth policy, of which VINET actually play an effective role.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim, and hello, everybody. So yeah, one of our most impactful contribution towards national building was the review of the national youth policy. So this is a policy document where the views and ideas and contribution of young people have been written in order to see their collaborativeness in pushing towards national development. So this policy is being reviewed after every 5 years in Sierra Leone. So the last review took place in 2018. So the initial plan of this consultation, left a huge number of marginalized youths out of the review process. So what we did as a network was to form a meaningful and inclusive partnership with the Ministry of Youth Affairs to ensure that every young person, regardless of their status, their regions, their communities, or educational background, could have their voices heard in the review of the youth policy, because we believe that what is for the youths without them is never for them. So we, from support the support we got from VIONet International Sierra Leone, we were able to undertake the following exercise. So we collaborated and then mobilized around young people to popularize the review process to radio discussions and TV engagement. We also held workshop for 150 volunteers on credible data collection across the 4 regions in the country. And we were also able to reach about 24,000 marginalized young people during the consultation process, which was very, very informative. And we were also able to ensure the participation of those marginalized youths during the policy validation process at the regional level. So we really strive to move out of the capital to like touch base with all the regions, or a huge number of young people across different villages and towns, just to have their say within that policy, because it's supposed to be an inclusive process if it's to be done for young people. So it was really a meaningful engagement, and the policy has been reviewed and it's been published. It's out there and we're still using it to reach more young people, and we're striving to like localize it to different dialects, different languages, not just the Creole, which is the national dialect. We're striving to really get it into local languages, whereas it will reach the layman, the youths, within the media gray areas, that every young person in Sierra Leone could be touched and will have his or her voice in it. Thank you so much. I will now hand the mic to Agatha to like give us our walk around COVID-19 response.
So thank you so much, Mariatu, for the great presentation. I'm going to continue from the COVID response action that was undertaken by VIONet through the support of VSO. So during the outbreak of COVID in the world, Sierra Leone, at first, we were at peace because we never had a confirmed case. But in March 31st, 2020, the president of Sierra Leone, Julius Maada Bio, confirmed the first recorded COVID-19 case in the country. Initially, for Sierra Leoneans, we are down because when we look at the news, when we got information from our people living abroad, we see the impact of COVID on nations, the impact of COVID on families and the economy. So it was a bit discouraging for us. It wasn't a good news. So what we did as volunteers for VSO was to see how we could mobilize young people to push the message, because we believe in the power of young people to effect change in their communities. So we rely on their expertise, and through support from VSO, we worked with the Ministry of Health and Sanitation to collaborate with the Government Emergency Response Center here in Freetown. So we mobilized young people, and these people were being trained by the health officials that are working at the Government Emergency Response Center. So they were trained on COVID-19 messages using both the agreed message that was put together by the ministry from WHO, as well as the one that was used, that was confirmed by the health ministry. So there were a lot of misconceptions as to actually the way people acquire in terms of how you get the COVID and also how it transmits. So because of this misconception, because of this myth initially that we are having at community level, we use these young people as ambassadors. We train them and send them into the communities to raise awareness in marginalized, hard-to-reach, and remote communities on COVID-19 prevention, as well as how it could be contained at community level. We engage the radio at all regional level on the prevention messages, and also in fostering in the fight against COVID-19 at community level. So the essence was, this was actually to see how we can contain the transmission of the COVID-19. And also because of there were a lot of fake news as to how COVID is being transmitted, how families, how it could also be treated in terms of the treatment. So these fake news, we also use these ambassadors that we are being trained and also send them into the communities to combat the fake news as to how communities should mobilize themselves. If you, for instance, did a lot of engagement via radio as well as on social media as to how we could prevent the the COVID transmission at both community as well as national level. So we also did, we also used our ambassadors to combat fake news around COVID-19, which was spreading like a wildfire in communities and causing a lot of, it actually had a lot of issue in terms of compliance. We also established sanitation stations and distributed sanitary equipment in all strategic key entry points in the various communities across the 4 regions. So through this, our messages, through our awareness raising, through our intervention in terms of supporting government to containing the spread of COVID, to preventing COVID across the country, we are able to reach over 30,000 people in marginalized communities, both physical and those that are persons with disability. So the messages were spread out and we helped the government in containing the spread. So moving forward, what we want to do, in as much as VIONet has done so well in terms of using volunteers to support, to provide humanity services across the nation, we're looking forward, we wish to deepen our engagement with other institutions, especially those from the global north and as well as the south. So we also develop further activities for the regional and national networks, because our engagement is, we can say we are doing well, but we still have challenges. So we want to see how we can enlarge our tentacles to see how we can do more in terms of achieving the sustainable development goals. We also deepen our engagement to ensure more inclusive and equitable volunteering for peace and development. Also serve as a role model for other continental and sub-regional clusters for similar interventions. Thank you.
And thank you. That was a very good presentation from you. Thank you very much. And next to Aminata Kelly-Lamin. Aminata is the lead in policy and advocacy at ActionAid Sierra Leone. Her focus is on natural resource governance, advocating for the proper resettlement and relocation of communities affected by mining. She's also working with young people as volunteers on peace and electoral campaigns, mobilizing first-time voters and fostering peace among political youths using music. Currently, she's part of the technical committee of a tripartite working group working for the development of a national volunteering policy for Sierra Leone.
Good day, listeners, to this session of Inclusive Volunteering in Practice, Advocacy for Reform, Session 10. My content will speak to ActionAid Sierra Leone, who we are and what we do, our key activities, approach to advocacy, and then I'll conclude. ActionAid Sierra Leone, who we are and what we do. ActionAid is a member of the Global Federation of ActionAid International. It was established as a country program by ActionAid UK in 1988, and it became an affiliate program in 2008, associates program in 2008, and an affiliate in 2011. ActionAid is governed by a national board, registered as a national organization, and it's a member of the ActionAid International Federation. That is why we have like dual citizenship, I will say, or identity. We can speak on national issues, but at the same time, we can also connect with the international. ActionAid Sierra Leone, who we are, our vision is a just, equitable, and sustainable world in which every person enjoys the right to a life of dignity, freedom from poverty and all forms of oppression. We vision this through social justice, gender equality, and poverty eradication by working with people living in poverty and exclusion, their communities, people's organizations, activists like yours, social movements that drive processes, etc., and their supporters. ActionAid Sierra Leone work under strategic priorities for the 2018 to 2023, we have a strategy we call Enhancing People's Action for Social Justice. Thus, we continue to work with and all our partners, coalitions, network, alliances, you name them, movements to influence policy formulation, legal and regulatory frameworks that are in the interest of the poor and excluded people. So our position here is about the poor and marginalized. And so under the three strategic components of our work, the first one, we engage the structural causes of violence against marginalized women and girls so that we promote recognition, reduction, and redistribution of what we call unpaid care work for economic justice. And then we improve public sector accountability for the provision of responsive basic public services. That is under our priority 2. And our third priority, we advance responsive humanitarian action, where we prioritize women and girls' safety, participation, leadership in emergency preparedness and response. And so during this year and past years, we have been able to engage on women's rights work under priority 2. We have village savings and loan associations for women. We worked with in all our 8 geographical areas. We call them local rights programming areas. We enhance women through financial education and business management trainings and provided them with small grants, making them resilient to resilience to the effects of COVID-19, sorry. And as a result of that, over 600 million in Sierra Leone, in the Leone currency, was saved by VSLA groups in both our sponsorship and our projects service engagement. Under our PL2, which is our governance work, we normally call it, we trained 100 young people who in turn reached 734, of which 350 were female and 348 male of their peers on the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance. And by such, we make them go to ghettos, slums, etc., to engage on this issue of democracy, elections, and governance under our electioneering program. Young people use the knowledge they gain from this training and the many more outreaches they did, and they were able to organize themselves on a week-long online social media campaign in 2020 for the withdrawal of the COVID-19 emergency fund regulation. This was a fund, a regulation that was to be passed through parliament, but it was leaked through social media. And so when it was captured, it was blown out of proportion in the media by the young people, and that regulation never entered parliament. So that is the kind of work we do around with young people. We also, under our governance work, we were able to distribute bursary items to 761 school beneficiaries in 2 local rights programs, enhancing children's back to school. You know, we give them pens, pencils, just to encourage them to go back to school through our sponsorship program. Under the humanitarian, we reactivated our neighborhood watch groups in communities, which led to low record of COVID-19 cases in our LRP since March 2021, it was announced, which means communities come together, especially women, and they watch from home to home, each other, watching their neighbors and ensuring that these neighbors, whoever is sick, is encouraged to go to the hospital, and they do that and ensure that they have hand washing machines in all of these areas. And so our approach to advocacy reforms over the years has been working with partners, coalitions and movements and networks I have already told you about. We work with them so that we have many voices, critical voices and masses around a particular issue, whether it's on gender-based violence, whether it's on public financial accountability, and so on and so forth. And so with that critical mass, no one organization is held responsible. It's a critical mass, and so no organization is victimized in the drive to get actions for our advocacy. Secondly, we conduct lots of research and develop policy briefs on situations that emerge in our communities, and we share this with our leaders to demand for alternatives. We present propositions, we present proposals, and then those proposals speak to the alternatives we look for in our government engagement. And on the other side, we also engage in national budget hearing processes to influence allocations and domestic tax mobilization so that more resources progressively can go into the consolidated fund, and then they can be equitably shared among sectors and among social sectors in particular, say education, health, and so on and so forth. And as a result of that, we have been able to advocate for reforms on GBV against women and girls. And with that, we got a stronger Sexual Offences Act right now, which creates penalty of 15 years and more for any perpetrator. And then we have reforms for women's rights also, where we've got a gender empowerment bill right now that we are doing consultations all around the country, in some parts of the country. And that speaks to like 3 issues: that's 30% minimum women involvement and participation in selective and appointment position, as well as other civil service role and financial access for women as well as men. This is indeed worthy to note that all engagements and at all levels, young people constitute the largest population, and they are the center of voluntary services for the development of their communities. All of these examples I've shown to you, they are in some cases being done by staff as well as for community volunteers, women and young people. This means that reforms meant to create the enabling environment for them must be pioneered by the young people themselves, supported by other sectors of society. As capacities are built for them to champion their own policies, formulations, implementation, monitoring, and evaluations are some of these capacities that can be given to them in pursuing such laudable drive. Once more, I want to say thank you for listening to this presentation from Aminata Kelly-Lamin, ActionAid.
And now, before our final speaker, thank you, Aminata, I'd finally like to introduce Syed Hasnain. Syed is a refugee from Afghanistan. His very detailed and moving bio on the website, on the IVCO website, describes his 8 years of tremendous struggle for status as a refugee, which he finally secured in Italy, which I invite you all to read. He was one of the founders and president of the first National Union of Refugees in Italy. The aim of this refugee-led union is to change the negative and toxic narratives around the issue of migration by highlighting the active and positive participation of refugees in their host societies. Syed is member of the expert group on the views of migrants in the field of migration, asylum, and integration at the EU Commission. Currently, he's working as project officer and social media manager with Missing Children Europe on the Manila app project. Manila is a mobile application which provides legal information to migrant children and guides them to the nearest organizations that provide services for children in 8 European countries. Thank you, Syed. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me in this session. So I introduce myself. My name is Syed Hasnain. I'm originally from Afghanistan. This is the map of my journey. So from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, I have been to Pakistan, then to Iran, and then to Turkey, and then I arrived in Greece in 2006. With like many other refugees, and where I have been also a victim of labor exploitation. And then from Greece, I continued my journey under the track to arrive in Italy, where I asked asylum in 2007. So not an easy journey, and I just want to give a very brief introduction also about my past, my story, because my journey reflects the story of many other refugees. And also it somehow highlights the power and the resilience of refugees. So when I arrived in Italy, then I asked asylum. Then I started working with other asylum seekers and refugees as a cultural mediator, translator, and social worker, legal advisor. Then I continued also my studies and got my graduation in 2019. I would like to continue regarding my organization. So in 2019, in Italy, there was a far-right government that they were instrumentalizing refugees and asylum seekers. So everyone was speaking about us as refugees, but no one was speaking with refugees with us. So in that occasion, together with other refugees, asylum seekers in Italian context, we started to somehow develop the idea of first national network of refugees and exiles in Italy. So we established the Italian National Union of Refugees and Exiles, which is in Italian UNIRE. UNIRE means to unite and to unify. And the main objective that we created our network was to take active part, to be an active member of host society, and also to self-represent ourselves, and also to speak about self and tell our story, speak about our expertise, about our experiences. From our side, not that anyone else should take the place and the space and the floor to represent us. And then another main objective of establishing UNIRE was to somehow do advocacy, a refugee-led advocacy on national level, to put together voices of refugees and to do advocacy for refugees, for their rights, for their integration, for their inclusion in Italian context. And then another objective was to somehow influence policies related to migration, asylum, and integration. So in many cases, we know that refugees and asylum seekers, they are not consulted, their views are not taken in consideration when especially in policy making processes related to migration, asylum, and integration. We want to contribute. We want to give our active contribution also on that level, on legislative level. So our aim is to somehow improve the policies. In many cases, procedures, they do not work well there. They are not efficient and effective. But if direct stakeholders, refugees and migrants, they somehow their views are taken in consideration, then we will have even better policies in this regard, and they work very well on the ground. So here I have, if you see, this is the like a basic, a very small phrase of Gandhi, which somehow explains our view. Whatever you do for me, but without me, you do it against me. So this is the main, the main reason that we are born as a refugee-led organization in Italy, because we want to be consulted, we want to take active part in public debates, in mass media, everywhere. When we speak about refugees, refugees should be included. It doesn't mean that UNIRE should be there. We want other refugees. So if there is any an event, that a conference, public debate, a workshop, a seminar, or any other event, and it is related to migration, asylum, and refugees' rights, we should see their faces of refugees, and we need to hear the voices of refugees. For this reason, we have created UNIRE. So migrant representation in mass media, it is really important because you know very well, it is not only in Italian context, it is European and also global issue that migrants are instrumentalized by especially by far-right groups, and there are some also sometimes this paternalistic approach by other stakeholders that they say we are on we support refugees, we are we are with refugees. So I think we need to change also that sometimes we are considered as a victim, we are considered as a needy people. So that is also an obstacle for us to take active part in those spaces. So and especially the instrumentalization on social media, on mass media, had a very negative impact on our image in public opinion. So we want to change that in order to take our active role in mass media. In fact, in order to somehow give the right skills to refugees, that they can speak on their behalf and they can communicate directly with people, we need to give them, we need to somehow organize capacity building in order to have public speaking and communication skills. In fact, UNIRE does this too. We organize annually training courses in public speaking and communication, and also communication on social media. And then, as I said before, we need to somehow take in consideration the role of refugees and asylum seekers on policy level. So if we want to have more efficient and effective policies, we need to consult them. In fact, UNIRE is the first refugee-led organization which is member of expert group in European Commission, where we give our view on policies of European Commission related to migration, asylum, and integration. So we can have in Italy, luckily, 3 weeks ago, we had also a consultation meeting with Interior Ministry, Education Ministry, and also Labor Ministry on the 2022 National Plan on Integration of Refugees. So from our side as refugees, we can contribute, we are willing to contribute, we can make the policies better, we can reform the policies on maybe human rights based approach. From our side, there is willing, but we need also the institutions that they should take in consideration our views. If you want to have any further information, I can reply. So thank you, Mark.
And thank you, Syed. Thank you for that. So that completes our presentations. Thank you very much.